Hi, it's Kylie Koo. Welcome to my studio. So, it's the next day. I've already put a video up on Saturday showing how I created this, and I'll leave a link above, below and at the end and all those good places. So I wanted to leave this overnight before I came to do something else with it, just to make sure that it was fully dry, because a lot of things on here take a lot of drying, like the wipe that I used and the cardboard, because they just all absorb water and take a while to dry out. So I wish you could touch this because it feels absolutely amazing. The texture on it is lovely. Now it's a bit of a dilemma for me because in some ways I like it as is, but it is a background. But I know that in terms of what I want to do next, I want to retain a lot of the texture that's in here. I don't want to lose it by covering a lot of it up. So what I'm thinking is I've still got some tissue paper, and since the prompt for this week was about texture, you know, including embossing and things like that, I'm thinking of stamping on the tissue, then maybe using some embossing powders over it, then trying to glue these down and onto my background. So yeah, I'm hoping that will allow me to let the tissue almost melt into the background, not be seen, but allow whatever is stamped on it to show through a bit. I'm thinking maybe using black as the embossing powder, or maybe some bronze or gold. I'm not sure yet, but I'll give it a go with a couple and see how I like it. I'm liking the roughness of the edge here. I will take this little bit off now that it's dry, and I'll take this little bit off here. And let's take it from there and see where we get to. This, to me, is kind of prehistoric looking, cave-like. There's a lot of my work kind of ends up looking kind of like this. You know, the journal page that I did not so long ago was kind of like this. So it's just something that seems to come out in my work. So loving these ribs. I do like work that is very tactile. So yeah, I'll switch into kind of editing mode now and get on with this. Okay, I'm in editing mode now and I've put this on a bit faster. So I'm going to use various stamp sets, and this is obviously just an embossing ink pad, and just going to start to stamp a few features that I'm going to incorporate. So that's black embossing powder, and I'll list all the makes and colours down below. So I wasn't sure at this point if I wanted the black, or I can't remember, I think I said copper, it's maybe bronze, we'll see in just a second. So it is actually copper. So just going to do one of each of these, and I just want to see how these look against my piece. Now obviously I have put this on at speed. You can slow it down by using the little gears. It never looks quite right, but you know, you can slow the process down a fair bit. And I will at some point during this pop back in when I was actually talking during the recording of it. So I'm doing a mix of kind of voiceover and actually speaking when I was recording. So just looking at this in different places, noticed there was a little bit I hadn't quite activated there, and I'm just going to tear them down a little bit more. This tissue paper was actually quite thick and was quite difficult to tear, but it was interesting because after I put the embossing powder on it, I was able to tear more or less quite neatly round the circle. So just going to use some matte medium to put this into place, the exact same medium I was using when I was putting the main pieces of texture down. Now this does pick up a little bit of colour from my previous work on it, from the powders I think, but it's okay because what it does is to give a little bit of colour to the white tissue. But again, I'm just using that process of dabbing just to get it right into all the existing texture that's already there. Now I like the copper, I wasn't sure if I'd like the black, but I just decided to go for it anyway. The only way I was actually going to be able to tell if I did like it was to get it down. It just felt a little bit bold, but as you'll see, I actually go with it in the end. I didn't think I was going to like the black, but actually, now that I see it on, it's okay. I'm picking up some gold, I think, from the primary elements from yesterday, and actually I think that's helped to blend it a little bit. It gives colour to the kind of white of the tissue, but that's okay. I do like that. I thought I was going to go more with that, but now that I've seen the black, I do like the black as well, but I don't think I'd want it as one big piece. I might put another couple of these on. Might play about with the other embellishments that I want to do first. I certainly want a sense of something coming along here, I think. So I'm just going to keep playing. Turned out, you know, as I was hoping it would. I think for me this is going to be a bit of a slow thought process. I'm just going to take it bit by bit. You know, a lot of the time I kind of go right into it, but today I'm kind of, maybe it's, you know, it's a Saturday morning, I just want to sit and think about it, play with it and get it to the best possible place. I think I know the main feature I want up here, so I might just do that next. Okay, let's keep going. Okay, I left the crinkling of the packaging in there just as a good kind of sound effect. So following a similar process here in terms of using this kind of stacked stones stamp, not easy to say. It's in two sizes, so I just put the smaller on top of the larger. And at this point I decide I don't want the embossing powders on too thick, and I also decide that I want to try and mix the two together. So I put the black on first and then followed that with the copper, hoping that there were little bits that hadn't fully grabbed the first lot of powder. Just felt that I didn't want these quite as bold as the others, and I think, you know, it worked. I got a bit of a mix of the two. I didn't want to mix the two powders together because I just thought that would be wasteful. So I liked the way that this turned out, and you'll see that I'm going to put it on the corrugated cardboard on the left hand side. But you'll also see that I keep looking at it and I turn it over because there's something about seeing it from the other side that I quite like as well. Can't decide if I want it shiny or through the other side. It gives me the colour, but without that kind of glossy, in your face kind of shine to it. So I actually put it down the other way. And again, I've got some colour from the background coming up, but to me, that was just perfect. It helped it blend in. So this to me is just looking at stacked stones within this kind of cavern, this cave thing. Again, just dabbing it in to get it right into the ribs of the corrugated cardboard. Now I'm looking now at this bit in the middle, and to me this feels like a pathway up and out of this deep cavern. So I'm just going to use those stacked stones again, just very, very lightly, just to give a hint of some steps, some stairs, some stepping stones following that line. So as I say, I'm not putting it on too thick, but when you see it closely you can just see it, and I'm just following it up that piece where I'd put the tissue in the first part of this, where I'd put the tissue, following it up and round. So to me it is like a stairway up and out of this deep cave, this cavern. and just putting a little bit there on that side for effect as well. I could have kept with the embossing, but I felt the embossing was just going to be too heavy for this. I wanted something more subtle. So I'm taking this butterfly stamp. It does have words across it, but I know they won't come out on this. So at this point I'm looking at it being placed quite high, but it felt too high. And what I decided to do here is to take this small stamp with stars. And again, starting to emboss it and putting some silver embossing powder down. Now what I do here is I don't fully activate the silver because I don't want it to stand out. So I go over it lightly, but you'll see that only some of the stars are as bright. So tore this into 3 separate pieces because I wanted to spread it out across the top. And again, I take my matte medium and start to put it in place. Made sure my brush was clean at this point because I didn't want any of the gold from further down going onto this. Now already at this point I was thinking, I don't like this because this to me is not blending in the same way as the other pieces have. Just dabbing it there with my small brush, and I could have gone with it, dried it a bit, but right away I felt that this was just not right. Keep going, seeing if I can make it work, and then I just decide no, and I just take these right off. Wanted to leave this in so you could see where I got to with that process and why I changed my mind. So I dry that off thoroughly. I then take this Moonlight white ink stamp. This is quite a juicy ink stamp and it takes a little bit longer to dry than the likes of the Stazon, but I decide to stamp directly onto the page this time, and that gives me more of the effect that I was actually hoping for. So by now I'm thinking a cave or a cavern, and something where you can see the night sky from within it or towards the top of it. So I give that a good dry. As I say, that ink does seem to take a while to dry. I knew where I wanted to place my butterfly, and it felt to me like everything was going to be towards the top of the painting. So I'm just adding in a few more of these stacked stones at the bottom, just to give a bit of interest down there so it doesn't feel like simply an empty space. So this is all about, I guess, symbols, and those circles for me were kind of symbols, definitely almost for me kind of prehistoric feeling. Now I decide that I need to bring the butterfly down a bit from where I was originally going to stamp it, and it's going to go right over that bit where there is the piece of wet wipe that I put down when I first pulled this together. Just took out a slightly juicier Stazon pad there because the first one didn't have a lot of ink left in it. So I know I'm going to have to press firmly, and I know that it's not going to be a perfect print because this is so textured. You see, leaning down on that really heavily to try and get it. So to me it feels in the right place, but I need to do something to try and bring it out just that little bit more. It is one of these stamps that has a kind of distressed look to it, you know, so it's not supposed to be a clear stamp, for want of a better word. Clear obviously isn't the word I'm looking for, but it has a bit of a distressed look to it. So I'm just taking a fine line marker and just adding the kind of outline of that wing that goes across the wipe. And that starts to help it a little bit. But I'm still feeling that it needs a little bit more. So what I do here is I take my little scrubby brush, as I call it, and I just use some of that Moonlight ink and start to use that more like a kind of paint, just to go around this outer edge of the wing, just to see what that does for me. And I like the way that the butterfly starts to stand out against that. And you'll see that I then continue further round with it. So this was one of those things that, although I had envisaged putting the butterfly in, I hadn't envisaged doing this, but it just came to me as I was working. I still had some of the clear gesso white paint mix from the day before. It was still sitting on my desk from filming the previous day. So I start to use some of that as well. Putting it on quite sparsely. I don't want it thick because I still want to see some of that background through it. And the more I worked on this, the more I felt like this butterfly was starting to emerge from that cavern, coming out into the light of the night sky. And you'll see here that I start to do small brush strokes again, still using that scrubby brush, but almost to get the sign, the feeling of light, whether the butterfly is emerging into the light or whether the light is emerging from the butterfly. I don't know, it just felt the right thing to do. And I just keep going with that. It's covering over a little bit of the stamp because those black dots are part of the stamp. But that's okay. I will go back in and add the dots in just a little bit. I don't make them quite as big or as prominent as that. These little details on paintings I could work at literally for hours if I allowed myself to. So liking now how that's looking. I like the different textures of the butterfly. Just continuing those rays of light out a little bit further onto the corrugated cardboard on both sides. And looking all the time at how this then fits with the rest of the picture. I've taken this black marker just to add some touches of black to the butterfly, filling in a little bit of those details, just those little dots there, as I say, not fully filling them in, just adding a little bit to them. So the butterfly at this point is becoming more a kind of silhouette against that light. So all the time stopping, looking, assessing, seeing what else it needs. And here I take a small paintbrush, and again I'm just using some of that Moonlight ink, and again I'm just using that more like a kind of paint and just painting little bits onto the wings as if you can see through the wings, so you're just seeing some of the light starting to come through them. Just little tiny bits here and there. And interesting here, using the brush on the different bits of texture. I now start to add some of that into some of the texture below, and this to me just feels like it's where the light is perhaps hitting some of the high bits of that kind of rock face. So the entrance to the cave or the cavern is just hitting those bits, and in another sense it starts to feel a bit like a portal to me. So I'd be really interested to know what you see in all of this. Did you envisage it going in a different direction? As I say, or as I said at the very start, I didn't want to lose a lot of the background texture that was in this, so anything I did do had to hopefully enhance it further rather than change it substantially. So in the end of the day, although I worked away on this probably for over an hour or so, maybe an hour and a half, I haven't actually added an awful lot to it, but to me it just felt sufficient. So just taking my black ink pad and going around the edge of that there. I don't put too much on. I think I'm finished with this piece. I might come back at some other point and add some detail. I'm just not certain about that at all. It could be finished as is. So here I am. I'm just using that ink again and the end of my paintbrush just to dab in a few more stars. In a moment I'll just show you the piece just in a little bit of more detail. Now, one of the other backgrounds that I did recently, I have also worked on that, taken that through to a conclusion. I'm not sure if I'm going to put that up this week or whether it will go up the following week. But just to let you know, that's coming as well. It was a painted background that I did with watercolours. I've taken that through. I had seen something in that at the time and I've taken that through to completion. So just looking at all the detail, those definitely feel like symbols of some sort to me. I like the stones, the stepping stones going up the side there, or the stacked stones, the stones of the pathway coming up and into this portal or this opening. So I do hope you've enjoyed seeing this, and if you've made it through to this point, thanks very much for sticking all the way through. So hope to see you next time. Meantime, please take care, and I look forward to seeing you again. Thanks so much for watching. Bye for now.